All right. Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Mindset Podcast. I'm excited for today. I got a gentleman here that most of you guys probably all know. Dude, honestly, I feel like I was in the dark because you and I didn't really know each other for a long time until like a couple months ago. I'll share the story how Steve and I connected, but this guy is, man, he's an OG in the business. He's killing it right now, absolutely dominating as I looked into this. So I'm excited. I think there's going to be a ton of value. I put a lot of great questions together that hopefully you guys get some value from today. So I got Steve Valentine on here.
What's up, man? It's good to be here.
Yeah.
It's good to finally connect.
I know. So this whole thing started, he shot me a DM on Instagram. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And you guys know like our brokerage is like Limitless and he's all Limitless with his brand. And I'm like, what the hell is this? This is weird. Like, this is like, he likes classic cars. I like classic cars. I'm like, this is kind of weird. I don't know. And we were busy. We didn't get a chance to connect until Justin put together killer game, and Dylan obviously put together an awesome like Monopoly game for us, and we were able to get together and actually got to sit down and just chat and talk. I'm like, this guy's actually pretty badass. I like this guy.
It was a good time.
So here we are now.
Here we are.
You're putting on a cool speaking event tonight, which we're going to go attend to. So yeah, this guy's just got a ton of value, ton of experience. He's been in the business for a long time, and I'll let him talk about himself. But this is just one of those people, guys. If you're newer, you just shut up and listen and just take this in and just learn some cool things from somebody. So I'm excited, man. Thanks for coming today.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself. I'm gonna dive in. I got some fun questions, but why don't you give us a high level, quick overview of who the heck you are for those of us that don't know who you are, man.
So high level, I've been in the real estate business, licensed 23 years in July. Started off with my parents on a team. That went sideways in 2008 when shit hit the fan. So I had 2 little kids and was married, and I'm like, I got to go do this on my own and figure it out. Mm-hmm. And at the time we had we had invested $1 million in cash and assets that we lost, and we were personally guaranteed $1 million in debt that we walked away with. So we never filed bankruptcy. We worked through it, paid everybody back, settled some debts.
Which says something because not a lot of people did that at that time.
It was painful, but it was 3 spreadsheets of debt, and we just kept knocking it out a little bit at a time. The blessing was going from the market crashing into the REO experience, right? So the foreclosures, we sold about 5,000 homes in that time for Fanny and Freddie.
Gosh.
And it was a lot of work, but we figured out the systems and we made it happen. And it was our way out of the hole. And then, the traditional business, as the REO started to slide, it was starting to go into like, what do we do now? Like, what's the next evolution? And I think that's one of the things that I look at my career over the last 23 years. It's like every 5 years, there's a pivot. It's never been the same, right? Always looking to evolve or look at something different. And so 2015, we're like just finishing the last round of REOs as they were starting to cut brokers, and like, that's how it's going to end up. I'm like, fine. But at that time, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. 63 years old. My dad had bought over 1,000 homes at trustee sale during the downturn for investors.
For pennies on the dollar.
For pennies on the dollar. He built some massive portfolios. So it was 9 months from the time my dad was diagnosed until he passed. And during that 9 months, I spent 2 days a week at his company breaking it down to figure out how this is going to end so that it wasn't a total disaster when he finally passed. So as I was there 2 days a week, I started to see things, and I started to see like where the next evolution was going to go. I watched what my dad did for investors, but what really changed everything for me going forward was the fact that my dad did all this work for all these people for pennies on the dollar, but he died owning nothing. I'm like, you were a genius. You made it 40 years in this business, but you own 0 real estate. Yeah. Like, how does that happen?
You did it for everybody but yourself.
Right. You did it for everybody but yourself. Right. And so, what that really did was it shifted my mindset into what's possible. What did he miss? Right. It's the one thing that I can tell you, like, he left me with knowledge and how to apply it. He didn't leave me with a bunch of money. Yeah. It was like, okay, this thing. So that really started in 2015. It changed everything in my career. It changed everything for what we do now. And it was, I need to first do this for myself, and I need to figure it out, which I needed to start investing in real estate. We'd already lost everything, so how do we build it back up? Yeah. And so, it started with the very first Zillow appointment where I walked in, and the house probably worth $150 at the time. And we're walking around, and it smells like smoke. It was grandma's house, his inheritance. He just came from North Carolina. And I was such a chicken on the way out the door. I'm like, well, it's probably worth 150, 60 if you do these things to it, and then the commission and 6 months to do it and yada, yada. I'm like, what if I just give you $100,000? I wouldn't even look at the guy on the way out the door. And he stopped and he looked at me, and I didn't know if he was going to punch me or whatever. And he said, give me 102.5 and I'm peace out.
Yeah.
So we signed the contract on the hood of the car.
Yep.
He left. And I'm standing there going, this is really cool, but I don't have any money or credit. Now what? Right?
How do I sell this thing?
What do I do with this? Yep. So I ended up having coffee with my mentor, who I've been having coffee and playing racquetball with for 10 years. And I asked him, I said, will you loan me $110,000 to buy this house at 10% interest?
Right.
He's like, well, let me drive by it. He's so funny because he has nothing else to do. So he'll drive by everything he does a loan on.
Right.
So he goes over there. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. It was the very first rental that we bought, and we refinanced that one after 12 months. We had no money into it because of the equity spread. Yep. And that house today is worth, it just appraised for $395,000. We just pulled another $100,000 cash out of it. It still cash flows. So the point to all that is, at some point in time in your career, the instant gratification of a commission versus the long-term wealth building process of, can I sacrifice some income now for later on?
Which is still income.
Right.
You got it at such a discount.
Yeah.
If you really think about that, you got it from a 150K deal to a 102.5 deal.
Right.
You just put 40 grand in your pocket.
And here's the funnier thing is, like, now,
a commission check.
And even now, what I teach in my courses is, you can still pay yourself to buy something.
Sure.
Right. So, we started paying ourselves every time we bought some. So I still had incoming and I still had the asset.
Yep.
So what that led to was, the next iteration was, so my wife had done all of our accounting for Fanny and Freddie for all those years, making sure we got our money back on reimbursements. Yep. And she started hiring the contractors and doing like the design work. And she loved it. And she was like, she's living in a man's world, so there's no pissing contest. She loved the design aspect. So there's nothing better than having the contractor and the designer in one person. Yeah. And that, now today she's renovated a little more than 800 homes to this time. And we're building, I think we've got 18 spec projects in the works. Nice. Because we're trying to shift from fix and flip to the building side of things.
Development, yep.
And we've acquired more than 1,000 homes over the last 8 years. A lot of those we flipped. Right. We've kept 78 doors. So, our portfolio in 7 years went from one house to, its estimated value right now is about 50 mil.
That's awesome.
That are all owned personally.
Yeah.
So, but it's really cool to go back and look that, and this is what I teach, is you can learn the investor side and always go back to the traditional. It's like riding a bike. Like, this is the easy part. But once you have the investment side, you now become a problem solver for people, because not everything in this business can be solved with a sale or a buyer.
Absolutely not.
So now everything that I do is about limitless real estate strategies, right? Because there's no limitation to what we can do. Yeah. And that's, when I reached out to you, I sent you a picture of my tattoo, because it's our family motto. And what it came from was my dad. Everything was limited. Yep. I can't do this because, or I don't have the money because, rather than, how do I find a way to do it?
Yeah, too many people keep themselves in a box. Yeah. That's the problem. They have these things, and they're like, downside like real estate. I feel like you get your license. Oh, you have to do this and this, and they have these little boxes they put you in, and it's like, yeah, but how do you truly problem solve for people? How do you step outside the box, and then you can go play in the blue ocean? Right. So if here's your problem, here's the 10 different ways we can friggin' solve it. Sometimes going on the MLS is not going to solve that problem for you. No. And I learned that the hard way. I missed so many friggin' deals when I first started, because somebody taught me that stuff. As a traditional agent, people are literally coming to me heading into foreclosure. And at that time, houses weren't going in 2 days like they do in our current market. I didn't know what the hell to do. Just truly being a brand new agent, didn't work with any investor mindset, didn't have any of that, just good at what I did, marketing, getting business. But I still remember it was like 2 deals in particular. Hey, this thing's got to go to auction in like 3 weeks, get us out of this. I don't know what to do. Most agents don't. Nobody teaches anybody that stuff right away.
I think the other thing too is tying in, so many of us, again, on the limitations, we look at the segmentation of our business. You've got wholesale, you've got investor, you've got the fix and flippers, you've got the real estate agents, you've got property management. And it was showing people you can tie all this together in your business, because then you have options for everything. So, you can build some wealth, you can create some income, you can create some relationships, and these are all phases of the business. And what it does is it actually makes you market proof. So you got a lot of, and I know that, with your agents, some people are freaking out right now.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure.
I laugh because there's an opportunity in every market.
Every market.
Every up and every down
Yep.
it just depends on what side of that you'll choose to be on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Cool.
What you got on your questions? I can't wait.
Let's dive into this now. You know, I love to ask us this question. Let's just kick it off with this. What's the one thing that people misunderstand the most about you?
Misunderstand the most?
Yep.
That's a good question. You know, I think in the real estate space, it's, I think the misunderstanding is that I'm all investment and no traditional. So sometimes we miss out on some of those opportunities because this is just the space. Yeah. But that misunderstanding is also means that I've created the reputation for what I'm doing. Yeah. And it's okay. Yeah. It's actually funny. My kid came home the other day. He's 19. He's like, Dad, he's like, why did Scott list their house with these people when Wendy did the remodel for them?
Yeah.
And I said, buddy, look, like 10 years ago, I would have been upset about that.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. Scott knows that we are in the investment space and we do these things. And he actually listed the house with really good friends of ours. And I'm like, I'm glad he listed it with somebody good and it wasn't like some random person. Right. Yeah. And I said, look, that's great on the traditional side. And yeah, that commission's like 30 grand, but I didn't lose 30 grand because the day before I bought a house for 35 cents on the dollar. So I'll make way more money in that space than doing the traditional.
For sure.
But if they would have called, we would have listed it and done our thing and my team would have helped out with it. No big deal. But
absolutely.
You can always go back. So it just depends on how you look at it.
We want to see it. Absolutely. What is your biggest failure and what did you learn from that experience? Like a whole list of them. I know I do.
Dude, there's a huge list of them. You know what my biggest failure is, and I think our space is full of this, is I didn't understand enough about how business should be set up, operated, and not knowing enough about, well, not just the knowing, but not having good people. Like my CPA now is, my best investment ever.
Yep.
And not understanding all that structure. Because here's the learning piece. And I just went through this with one of my private coaching clients. I'm like, guys, I need to save you from yourselves. So just listen to me. And so when I set up everything with my mom and dad, I was dumping cash into the business. When we left, I was never on any of the corporation documents. So not only did I not get any of the carry forward losses for 10 years that my mom got,
right,
I paid taxes on the $1 million that I earned and paid back to people. And I got no write-off for it. There was no write-off for any of that bad debt because I wasn't attached to it.
You just didn't know.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, it's the biggest thing that I try to get people to understand is like, okay, you're a real estate agent, but are you really going to run a business and learn all the things you need to do? Because you're leaving a lot of money on the table and structure-wise is so important on setting things up. So that was probably the biggest lesson learned, like just on structure. Yeah. Like understanding structure.
Yeah. That's probably one of the biggest ones for me too, is leverage and just having the right people in your freaking corner. I think the problem is with us entrepreneurs, we want to do everything. At least I know I do. I love to do everything. Now I don't. I freaking hate doing everything.
Right, I hate doing anything.
I hate doing anything. But there was a period of time where it's like I have to know everything, and then you get to the point sometimes too where you're young and naive, and you're like, I think I know her, and I have a hard time handing anything off because they're probably just not going to do it as good as me.
Right.
And now I'm like the opposite. I'm like, I really suck at this. Who can I go hire that's better at this than I am? Because I really suck and I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and the big thing, like, I mean, CPA wise, I hear people all the time, oh, this person charged me like $5,000 to do my taxes. I'm like, you've got the right mind. You've got the wrong mindset. Right. What is I'll be honest with you, right? It's like my CPA is about $45,000 a year for all of our businesses and all the things that we do. Yep. But the amount of money she's saving me is probably 10 times that in my taxes and structure.
Such a different mindset people have on that. Yeah. They always look at the cost versus how much did it save you though.
Yeah.
So you could have somebody that you only paid $1,000, $2,000 to do your taxes, but you just paid 80 grand more in taxes that year.
Right.
Did you really win? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Buy a piece of real estate every year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of told myself the same thing. I look at all these, and you were in the game longer than I have, but I wasn't in it yet when the market. I bought my first house in 2009, right when the market tanked out. And then when I got into it, like 15, 16, I started selling houses for some of these investors. And I'm like, God, man, they paid 40 grand, 50 grand for this house. I'm selling for 200, 300, 400 grand right now. And it's just,
yeah. If you don't think I drive by houses or some I've gone back to and I'm like, I could have, but here's the regret on that is you have to start somewhere.
Yep.
So, real estate agents, if they would get to the mindset, like while you're doing traditional business, your real estate license is your biggest opportunity to create not only your own wealth, but generational wealth.
Yeah.
And so for me, this was about breaking the generational chain and going, my kids are going to be really set up and they're going to know about it. Yeah. So my kids are involved in everything. They see everything. They see the bank accounts. They see all the different things. So we're teaching them how to manage money and how to manage the flow and also understanding on what this is for their future, for their kids' future, if the cards are all played right.
Right.
And so, you know, if an agent, I did this and I've got a post somewhere on it, but, you know, I went back through and I'm like, okay, 99, I bought my first house, 2001, and I went through the prices of what the average price would be every 2 years. Yep. And you see where the law of average comes in. So even some of you right now, well, the prices are too high. Well, they're not. You got to start somewhere. So you might buy one high. If the market comes down, you buy another one low. It's going to average out if you just stick to the plan.
And then you get enough of the lows. You say, hey, I'm going to offset this high one. I'll sell it, do whatever I got to do, liquidate it, trade it, 1031 exchange, whatever you got to do. But yeah, there's no, I mean, how much time did you lose or how much money did you lose waiting 5-6 years for that right ideal? And nobody knows. That's the hard part. Nobody knows what it's going to look like. I mean, inevitably there's going to be ups and downs, but if you're only jumping in the business on the downside, that means you're only buying houses every 10, 15 years, maybe 20
Yeah, but
years
it's the same game with stocks, right? You buy it when it's up, you buy it when it's down, it averages out at the end of the day, but
just make smart buys at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more about, whenever I tell people, I'm like, look, this is not about chasing opportunities. It's about being prepared for it, having the mindset and having the tools to execute on it. Yeah. I don't chase anything.
Sure. Yeah.
Everything comes through the wheelhouse and you figure out what to do with it.
Absolutely.
When it comes through.
People miss the tax depreciation too.
Oh my gosh.
That was the thing. Like some people look at a house and they're like, oh man, I got this rental. It's only going to cash flow me a couple $100 a month. Yeah, maybe, but how much are you going to save on taxes depreciating that bad boy? Mike Ayala taught me that when we had that conversation. I remember he's like, yeah, but we were talking about all the benefits of some of these properties I have. And he's like, what do you like about them? And I was telling him, and he's like, what about tax depreciation? That's the biggest one. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Especially for real estate agents, because we've got a bigger write-off. I mean, the portfolio, my CPA always gives it to me because I want to know for what I'm teaching is last year, the depreciation in my portfolio saved me from writing a $150,000 check to IRS, more than what I already had to. So that's $12,000 a month in extra cash flow. If you want to put that out, you just have to wait for it till the end of the year. And it's the biggest, myth and piece that people do not understand. And again, it's like just going through that education and knowing that is totally different.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. What does your morning routine look like? You morning guy? Afternoon guy?
Yeah. Morning routine. Actually, I just kind of switch it up. So I'm usually up about 5, between 5:30. I do about 10 minutes of meditation, just like a Pandora meditation station, and just kind of focus. And the meditation thing is just like a catch and release of thoughts. A little bit of journaling, and then I go into our workout room. We've got a tonal, so I'll do a workout there. And then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, I play racquetball for an hour. Okay. And then on Saturdays, I go hiking.
Okay. Yeah. Racquetball. Like I said, I play the racquetball. I wouldn't say I do meditation. I get up and go for a walk every morning, listen to my podcast. I got like a good hour first thing before I head into the gym. I haven't journaled. Everybody swears by it. Yeah. I probably should start just to write down. Probably closely I do a journal. I get an app out on my phone if I come to think of things and I just start noting them down on my phone. But
here's the cool thing about the journal is it doesn't have to be like this long process. I actually call it brain dumping. Yeah. So, in 2014, 15, it's fun to go back and look at the things that I wrote and see where we're at and some of the problems I was trying to address back then versus what they are. Yeah, you do. You're like, what?
I had that the other day. I found a file, my computer crashed, and I found like an old laptop, and I was going through it, and then I was looking at like our team production and my production. I was like, holy crap. And I thought that was like the stuff back then. So it is cool, like from a historical standpoint, to be able to go back and have some of that stuff. Temp's really good at that. Templeton shared something on Facebook the other day where he like 2 years ago talked about something, and he's like, yeah, it was cool. It was like, he's like 10 miles ahead of that now. Super cool. So if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
Think and Grow Rich. Yep. Just because he met and interviewed all those people. Yeah. So, that is one of my all-time favorite books. If you haven't read it, Think and Grow Rich, do it. Yep. The funny thing about that book was actually an investor who scared the shit out of me when I first met him. The guy was at HP in their IT department, oversaw a $100 million budget. I was 20 years old when I met this guy, and he was from Britain, so he had this thick British accent. So he was like super staunch, and I'm like,
in your face.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know cap rates. What is a cap rate? Right. But he bought like 20 houses from me, and then we started down the road, and if we would have done it it would have been awesome. We started down the road to build a fund, like $5 million bucks in 2006.
Yeah.
And he like did all the stuff, SEC filings, like all the different things. And then the market crashed, so we couldn't raise enough capital, and then everything started to sink.
Which would have been the perfect time.
It would have been the perfect time. We were right there, right? If we had $5 million to invest, it would have been awesome. So,
you guys have been knocking it out of the
he
park.
was the one when we started down that road. He's like, you have to read this book, and we have to have a conversation about this, but you have to read this book first.
Yeah. That's probably hands down one of my favorite ones as well too. Yeah, that guy's interviewed a ton of people. So, would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh, it depends on the places I am, right? So most of the time, I would say an extrovert. You know, I like to be in the crowds, like I like to speak, and I like to, go out to places and do those things. So. But then there's nights I don't feel like doing anything, right? I'm like, just leave me alone.
Yeah, I always joke about that too with myself because I love being around people. I love meeting people, but I also am very much content with put me by myself for like a week and alone, and I'm okay with that too. And I don't like being around. So I don't know if I can identify. I'm good with people. I just don't know if I need to be around people. Sometimes, if that makes sense.
It's I love being around people, and I'm always a class clown when I'm with people because I like to have fun. That's the goal in our office is like, if it's not fun and impactful, I don't want to do it. Yeah. Like, forget it. Like if this seller is going to be the person that's like, wants all these updates and all these things, like I'm probably not the right person for you.
For sure.
And then we have a case of confetti cannons always on hand in the office.
You guys were shooting those things off a couple weeks back.
Yep. So much fun.
We do air horns around here. We take air horns and we tape them underneath the chairs on the shaft.
Nice.
So when people sit down on them real quick, when they're coming back, the air horns start going off. Yeah.
The confetti cannons are messy, but
we did one of that where we took the AC vent out of here and it sits on Scott's back there. And then we threw fake snow in there and then we turned the air on when he's sitting at his desk.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we love to have a little fun around here. So what's one thing that your business venture did that you did not expect, like a good thing that came out of that you didn't probably foresee coming?
I had no idea expectation-wise that we would be able to grow the portfolio as fast as we did.
That's friggin' mad. You said 78 houses?
Yep.
In 5 years?
Yep.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And that doesn't include like we've got 32 renovations in the process.
Walk us through that. Was that through, I'm guessing a lot of that wasn't like your own private money. Was that through like a fund you guys did that? Or was that just, hey, I'm saving every freaking penny I got from my deals and buying those and leveraging them through mortgages or something? Like, what does that look like? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so I'll walk you through it. So every agent has 5 people in their sphere that has more than $500,000 in liquid that would lend it out if they had the right conversation.
Right.
Okay. So one conversation turned into one gentleman that he's the millionaire next door, drives a 10-year-old cars, lived in the same house. I've known the guy forever. I asked him for one loan, he did it. And then I asked him for another one, he did it. And next thing you know, I have a $4 million line of credit with this guy at 8% right now.
And he's driving like an 03 Accord.
Yeah. Same thing with another guy. He was actually an investor inherited from my dad, and he did some flips with my dad, lost some money, didn't really want to do rentals anymore. Same thing. Yeah. And here's the goal with those guys. I talk to them every January. I'm like, hey, what's the goal this year? Is anything changing? And their answer always is, if you can keep the money working, you can keep using it.
Nice.
And so what happened was when we were really heavy into the flipping, we did all these private notes with people. So, right now we manage about $20 million of private capital in one-on-one scenarios. So it's not a fund. Yeah. Their money's attached to one property.
Got a line basically.
I send a text. Yeah. I'm like, will you do this 350 loan? How much funds are available? What are we doing? Oh yeah, I do have that. Cool. I'll have Erica send over the paperwork.
They doing it at a hard money rate for the most part. Is it pretty fair?
It's 8%.
That's not bad.
No.
Yeah.
But it's 8%.
So you just keep it on that for 6 months until you could do it out and refi it or
either
flip it or
we flip it, refinance it. But here's the cool thing: when you deal with private people and they start to build trust, they 100% financing the house and the repairs.
For sure. Yeah, because they know they're going to get it back. They trust.
So it's not like we've run out of funds. Right. So we've had to use like Capital Fund One and some of these other people where you got to put 10 or 20% down. We're liquid now and we can do that, but it makes it a little harder when you buy, because like in April, we bought more homes than most agents will sell in a year. So we bought $10 million worth of houses in April. But we had to put $2 million up in down payments. Right. Yeah. And we have to have the repairs on top of it.
So they hit you guys at like 2% down or 20% down?
It's 15% on average. So it just depended on the deal.
At 8%? That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. So, the 8%, it is what it is. It's a cost of doing business.
Right.
And sometimes I have to
still breaks out cheaper if you're not having to pay all these lending fees and all the crap on there and stuff too. It's like it's 8%, but you're still putting down your 15% like a normal mortgage. So yeah.
So how we built the portfolio was really interesting because I kept experimenting, and I'm like, there's got to be a way to do this. So the first one that I told you about, we refinanced it after a year. Okay. So there was 20.
You keep his hard money or their private money on it for a year at 15%.
It's rented. Well, so like 8%, the private money, he gave me 100%, right? It got rented. It was negative cash flow, $300 a month. So I paid $3,600 that year to keep it.
Right.
But I gained $50,000 in equity.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a good trade.
Yeah.
But then I refinanced it into a normal long-term mortgage.
Conventional. Yep.
And I had no money into it. So now I have a cash flowing asset that's making me $500 a month.
Because you had your 20% equity and it built up already from the flip and all that.
So it's getting over the scarcity of holding that expensive money, keeping in mind that a tenant is going to cover majority of it. So you gotta play the gap,
you
right?
Paid $3,600 and you own the house now.
Correct.
Out of pocket.
Correct. So then what we started doing was figuring out that, hey, if we buy the house with a private lender and we record a second mortgage from our construction company on every closing, that second mortgage can be any payoff I want. And what happens is it's considered purchase money. So when we refinance now, so we're building equity when we do the remodel. Then we go to refinance it. The first, the second are both purchase money, and we make the second for whatever we need to get to
the next house,
the 75% LTV, and get all of our repair money back plus a little bit of equity. And then we're peace out and on to the next one. So it was just about, the original goal was when we started flipping houses, we have to keep one a quarter. Okay, because what happens, we get so enthralled in flipping and the profits or losses, depending on which way, right? And we get so enthralled in it that we forget that if you make $50,000 on a flip, 20 of that's going back to Uncle Sam. Okay. So, and you don't have a long-term asset. I mean, some of these houses that we bought in 15, we paid $100,000 for, they're worth $4. Right. And if we would have sold them, we would have made 20 back then. So what did we lose by flipping it? So it's just having the goal. If you're going to go down that road, like so many people want to be flippers. I'm like, you know what? You're better off if you would flip to keep as a rental, like stay out of the profit game for now. But there might be some, and
or at least do a few, flip a couple, raise your capital, but every fourth one you're doing, try to set it aside and hold it.
That is exactly how we built it. And today is actually a little cooler because again, we keep finding other solutions. So we just refinanced. Here's the other big part about owning a portfolio. I'm not worried about cash flow right now. I'm worried about the long term and what can I do with the liquidity. So we just went through and refinanced 25 homes. The last one closed today. It was a pain in the ass, but we found a commercial lender that does it to the LLC. So they lend to the LLC, personal guarantee. It's not on my credit anywhere. And we were able to pull up to 75% LTV cash out. And so we just pulled $2 million cash out of the portfolio that's tax-free. The portfolio still cash flows, law of average over those 25. It still cash flows $10,000 a month. But we just made $2 million this year, no taxes. That's now ready to go for what's next, right? Where do we put this to work?
Is it like a portfolio loan they did for you guys on that?
They didn't do a portfolio.
Yeah, I have a buddy out in Utah that just did that. He sold like 3 of his properties, won a couple of duplexes, made pretty good money. Then he bought, I forget where he bought it at. It was like Arkansas or something like that. But he bought like 63 houses on one portfolio loan.
Yeah, those are great. The only thing I don't like about the portfolio is it doesn't allow you to play chess with the portfolio. That makes sense. So if I want to sell one and 1031 it's stuck. The balance goes into the portfolio loan. You can't take the equity.
That makes sense.
So it kind of locks you in. So you really have to be sure on that.
What's the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
To buy more real estate.
Same thing.
I mean,
I'm learning that one myself. I know.
It's just, I mean, we go back to all the houses. Even if you bought a retail listing in 2018, if you were sitting across from a seller and you're like, hey, I'd really like to buy this house without putting it on the market. You use your commissions as part of that.
Payment, closing costs, whatever you got to do.
All those things. And then actually, let me take that back. The biggest thing I've learned in my career is to ask better questions. So what I mean by that is that when we go out to, and we call them strategy sessions now, we don't call them listing appointments. We do a strategy session with a buyer. We do a strategy session with a seller. The reason being is because we start asking better questions like, okay, so you called me because you want to sell the house tell me the whys and tell me what your further goal is. Because I'll talk more people out of selling their house and showing them how they can keep it, how they can get an equity line, how they can move to the next one, and what it's going to do for their future. And then the other questions too is like, I just bought a house this weekend from a guy, and he met with 6 investors, right? His 92-year-old grandmother lived there for 40 years, kind of a hoarder house, needs some updates. So we're walking. It was cool too, because I did this call. I had never talked to him, and I did the call live on one of my coaching classes. And I'm like, guys, I've never talked to this. Like, watch this call.
Could be great, could be bad.
Could be it. So he's asking all the questions. And so we get to the end of it, and I'm like, so where are your offers come in? I said, I think I can probably get you at about 365. The house is probably worth 450. It needs some work. It's not like a huge spread. It'll be a perfect rental. But I asked him one more question. I said, how are you going to grow grandma's $300,000 when all this is said and done? Where are you putting it? And he says, I really don't know, and nobody's ever asked. I said, well, we have a deed of trust program where, grandma's money can come into our company at 8% interest. It's going to create $16,000, $18,000 annual income to help offset her assisted living costs. He's like, that's really interesting. So on Saturday, we sat down and met, and so full circle, because I asked these questions.
Competitive advantage too, because now maybe you're not the highest, but you're going to put his money to work for him.
And so at the end of the day, what we ended up doing, I said, let's make this simple. Grandma still owes $50,000 on this. Let's wrap the equity and the mortgage into this. We don't have to move the investment. It's still stuck to the house. So now all that's done, and we wrapped it all up into that, and the $50,000 mortgage didn't have to be paid off. She got $100,000 down. She can go do her thing. And now I have that property. I didn't have to go get new financing from anybody else. I just kept the money in the deal. And so now we'll go through, we'll do a little renovation on it. We'll get a tenant in it, and then we'll go and refinance with our commercial. And then that money will get paid off, and they'll bring it back in. So we always keep the money working for them. So just ask better questions.
Well, it's true. What the heck's he going to do with it? He might have had it spent already. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
But you probably talked him into spending it a better way.
Right.
It's actually beneficial. So in your opinion, what's the most important personality trait or strength someone would need to work in this industry to be successful at our job?
You have to be like Gumby.
You
got to be nimble. You got to be willing to pivot, shift. And always be learning.
That's the biggest. That's what I was gonna say. You have to be. That was gonna be like my answer when I think about that stuff. Or people have asked me that before. A lot of agents interview, with their brokerage. It's you have to be willing to learn. Like you're my thought. I even look back. 'Cause I've only been doing this like 7 years and I've done well. But I laugh at like here's what my thought process was on day one and here's where it is today. 180 degrees. I almost didn't like who I was when I first started. I'm like, F those guys, F those investors. They don't. And here I am. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm way more skilled.
And so the big thing about that with now is like you look at 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we didn't have all this knowledge at our fingertips. And I think it's just super important. When you see agents come in, the one thing again, you go from Limitless and you go to the investor mindset. The investor mindset, if you're not investing in yourself first, coaches, training, masterminds, putting yourself in the rooms with people, you will never have that evolution that you truly want to have. One of the biggest things that changed my life was I met Chris Harder at Lewis Howe's event in Columbus, Ohio. I never forget. I walked out and I listened to Lewis's book. I walked out, I told my wife I was going to Columbus, Ohio. She's like, what the fuck? She's like, what's in Columbus? There? I'm like, I don't know. There's this thing. It's like an influencer event. I don't know what it is.
But I want to check it out.
But I'm going to go check it out. And this was right around the time that my dad had passed. And so I went with the goal that I'm going to buy somebody lunch or a drink. Whenever I sat down, I was going to meet different people.
Just network.
So the first gal I met, she's like, oh, you've got a great story. You need to meet Chris Harder. I'm like, who's Chris Harder? And I met Chris, and then I was on his podcast, and he's all about money mindset and all those things. And I ended up signing up $25,000 for the first year when it was his first year he started it to do a mastermind. I didn't know what a mastermind was. I didn't know what to expect. All I know is I'm writing this guy a $25,000 check for I have no idea what's going to happen. And so 5 years later, I'm still there. I'm like the flunky senior that just hangs around with all the new people. But it was a space that changed everything for me. The people that I met, the people that I learned from, and the things that I started working through in life. And he's been a great coach, but so have a lot of the other people that I met in that room. And it is by far paid off
That's the thing is, I'm glad you brought that up because you're like 25 grand. Some people probably just heard that like, whoa, 25 grand. And I probably would have been that guy 7 years ago. It's like, whoa, and I'm not downplaying. That's not a lot of money, but how much more money have you made because of that 25 grand?
Like probably $1 million.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. So think about the ROI on that, guys. Like that's the thing. And it's funny because you get a lot of people today, like newer agents, tell them the same thing. Like, just go hire a coach. Like, if there's one thing you want to do to fast track yourself, just go friggin' hire a coach. And most of these programs are pretty affordable. You know, you get into them, and new agents like, oh, I'm not going to spend that on myself. And the first thing that goes to my head is like, you don't believe in yourself. That's it.
Right.
Like, you just don't. You don't see the value in yourself.
And
people
sometimes
spend 80, 90 grand on college degrees all friggin' day for 4 years, and I look back and I'm like, man, if I would have took that same $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 I spent on college and just went to one guy that is just killing it, like what I want to learn, I'll give you $100,000. Number one, I guarantee he'd listen to me. He'd be like, okay, what do you want to know? I'll teach you everything. How much faster would I get to where I want to go? It wouldn't take me 4 years, probably. I mean, it may have in some ways, but I mean, you were literally. I feel like college degrees are kind of like watered down a little bit. I remember with college, I went to school. I don't even think I really use a whole. I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't take anything away from it. I got some information out of it, but realistically, out of those whole 4 years, there's probably like 4 classes that are like, oh yeah, that made a big difference.
Yeah, we
like,
could do a whole podcast on education.
Yeah, but I look at, I'm like, same thing. Like I had a mentor I paid when I was in the e-com space and stuff like that, and he calls me. I chased this guy for like a year. I'm like, dude, teach me. He ignored me. One day I get a call. He's like 15 G's. I was like, okay, sounds good. My wife's like, what do you mean? I'm like, no, just trust me, it'll work.
Yep.
That guy made me a couple mil from that 15 grand. Had I not just paid that guy, and he's like, because in some ways through that coaching, you're not paying for the knowledge. Almost in some ways, you're paying for avoiding mistakes. That's the thing for me. It took me like to where I'm at right now. I've acquired a lot of knowledge, but man, I would say it's like 80% mistakes, 20% the right things. Let me just have you jump over that 80%. I'll teach you the 20 that's going to get you there a whole lot faster.
It goes back to like the CPA thing. Yeah. Right. So
nobody understands that stuff. It drives me crazy.
But I think it's also in our space I think sometimes it requires multiple coaches, right?
Oh, for sure.
And multiple investments. But again, you're talking about fast tracking. Yeah. So, one of my students this year, my group coaching that I do every Tuesday, it's $1,000. Yep. One of my students, he's literally made $70,000 in 6 months.
Yep. For a 1K investment every month.
Because some of the deals, he's like, I don't know what to do with the seller. I'm like, well, put the seller on a Zoom call with me and I'll negotiate the deal and then you'll get paid.
I'll close it for you.
There was 2 deals he got paid 25 grand each on in 7 days.
Yeah.
And he's like, my ROI is stupid, right?
Stupid good.
And at some point in time, he won't need me, but the knowledge is there for the rest of his life.
Yep.
Right. And that is just one of those things that, again, if you can fast track it.
And you're not going to pick that up in a book. You got a stuck seller here. Let me open this book. No, like you just had live coaching where you close the deal for him and showed him how it's done. Gave him confidence behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. Who's been your most important professional mentor? We were just talking about that. So let's like, who is it? Who, if you had, I think Chris Hardy you mentioned, but is there anybody else that stands out?
Well, I mean, my dad was really, my mentor, even though we had a falling out, that 9 months was really healing our relationship. But,
for sure.
My dad always left an open door for me. So, when I left the house or got out of high school, I'm like, I don't want to do college. And I loved working on cars in high school. I built some trucks. It was one of my passions.
Same.
I didn't know it was going to suck when you had to do it for a living. Right.
It's a whole different ball game when you got to actually do it.
Right. But I remember working for a fleet company and one night somebody broke in, wiped out my entire mechanic's toolbox, right? It was like 50 grand worth of tools. And I got an insurance check for 50 G's. I was 20 years old. And I called my dad. I'm like, I kind of have a lifeline. Can I try the real estate thing? And my dad always left the door. He was like, you can try it, but there's no silver spoon here.
Yeah.
Right. And my dad, I mean, he made me sit at the end of his desk for the first 2 years. I went on every appointment with him. I listened to him talk on the phone, and I was paid $500 a week. I never got a commission for the first 2 years.
Yep.
It was just straight up. I got a gas allowance and some other things because he didn't want me to experience the commission check and the roller coaster.
It probably ruined somebody that young right away.
Yeah.
I got a really young guy with me who's killing it right now. Luckily, he's pretty smart with it, but I could catch him every once in a while. You can see where he's thinking just solely about the money side of it. And I'm like, dude, you're freaking young and you got no kids. You got nothing. Trust me, think bigger.
Yeah.
Don't think about just that. Think bigger because you're miles ahead of anybody right now. Yeah, it's tough when you get that young. You start running into that kind of money.
Yeah. So my dad and Chris Harder have probably been some of my biggest mentors. And then, they talk about rich dad, poor dad. So not that my dad was poor, but I think his mindset was kind of in that space.
Yeah.
And so my other mentor, John, who was a C-suite executive at APS, play racquetball with him for 10 years. He's 80 years old this year. He still plays with me for an hour twice a week. Those coffees that we've had over the 10 years. Now, crazy thing is he started APS when APS sold gas, and he started in a gas trench.
Oh, wow.
And retired as a C-suite executive. Yeah. And he taught me a lot about money, right? Money mindset, different things, what I should be doing, not be doing. And he helped me grow my wealth through those conversations. So again, it's like having multiple people in different places where you can learn a lot of different things from people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's I look at certain people that kind of coach me in some ways, and they're all great at something. Yeah, I agree with you there. If you try to limit it to like just one person, you're kind of short-sighted. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you need like a life coach in general. You're not going to go to somebody's like just killer, just make it just money. You know what I mean? So, that's the cool thing about coaching, though. You can go get whoever the heck, especially today's day and age. You can find anybody on social media, verify they're good,
right,
and yeah, you can have 3-4 people really dial in your freaking life for you in different areas.
Yeah, and the other person that's really responsible for like. I almost quit real estate. Funny story. So when we finally could buy a house again in 2012, we finally found one in the area we wanted, and we went to the open house, and I met Kimberly Ryan, and she's the growth leader for Real Brokerage where I'm at, and she was a listing agent. So we talked. She met my family. That deal was like, it was so crazy all that happened, and we ended up closing on it. And then a year later, we started the remodel process, and I took my focus off of what I should be doing. And I'm like, oh, we don't have any money. Oh, crap. I need to go back to work. So I called Kim, and at the time, she was the broker for Corinne Wynn. I said, Kim, are you coaching? And would you be willing to coach me? The coaching that I went through with her for 2 to 3 years, and she's still a very, very close friend of mine, was insane, because I told her, I'm like, I'm out. I don't want to do real estate anymore. She's like, no, your mindset's just in the wrong place. And so she really pulled me out, and I have this sheet that she did, and it's called a red shirt, where you kind of go through, if you were doing this now and you could hire it out, what would you be doing? And it got all the way down, and at the bottom of it, this was 5 years ago, the only words on the sheet left were wealth builder. And now that's what I do for people. Right? Help them build wealth.
Doing what you love. I love it. Highest producing revenue generator in your business right now for you?
My wife.
Okay. Some people say it's the opposite. They spend the most money.
Dude, I make a joke every time when I'm like selling something off market. I'm like, hurry up and buy this before my wife spends my life savings. No, but you know what? Here's the thing is like the highest generator is really, it's the real estate we hold. Right? Because that's the one that's paying me back the most. And it's always interesting when you talk to different people that are building teams and brokerages. I'm like, that's great, but none of my houses talk back to me. They're going to be here until I get rid of them. And, it was just a different focus.
For sure. Yeah, I went through that phase too, and I was like a solo agent. I was like, I don't want a team. I don't want to deal with anybody. And then, kind of through necessity, had to, because it got pretty busy and work life started really sucking. You're dealing 7-8 buyers by yourself every freaking month, and it sucks. Started a team, and then same thing. It's like, oh, this is a lot of work, and then scale. You just learn your lessons. And then after a while, like at this phase of my career, I'm like, okay, I got to start figuring out how to work smarter, not harder. Because what am I going to do? Grind for the next 20 years selling just houses traditionally and not having other avenues?
Right.
And then you start hanging around with other people in the business, and you're like, oh, these guys got it friggin' made. Like, they were smart. They took all their funds and they invested and they diversified and went into all these things, and they legitimately have a business. Because I don't think as a traditional real estate agent, and I don't care who argues with me about this, you don't have a business. You just don't. I mean, you're a service provider.
Correct.
You do. But if you, like, the thing that scared me about it, I remember was like, man, if I ever get sick or something, I mean, you could kind of relate with your dad and something like that. Something happens to me, my family's toast.
Right.
Like, the breadwinner is gone, and there is no money coming out if I'm not out there knocking doors and meeting the people. So it's like, I got to start building that wealth on the outside, which I love that you guys are doing that. All right. So how do you get most of your business leads these days? A lot of people are going to ask that. I know we were talking about some of these great deals you're friggin' buying and stuff. It's a tough market. Talk to me about it.
So, I always tell people I'm the worst CRM person ever. Okay.
Systematized.
My database is a mess. But, I actually just did this reel the other day. My question to anybody out there is, do you want your reach to be wide or deep? So my relationships run deep with my clients
Yeah.
and my friends and the people that repeat and referral. But most importantly, I built the reputation as a problem solver. And I was joking on a podcast on Friday. I'm like, to be honest with you, I go on more listing appointments with real estate agents than I do on my own clients.
Yeah.
Because the real estate agent's like, I don't know how to solve for this. I don't know what the strategy is. Will you go with me?
Yep.
Right. And I'll pay you a part of it. If you buy the deal, great, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So I was telling you about that great deal that I bought on Thursday.
Yeah.
It came from a real estate agent. She does higher end luxury, and she called. She's like, we don't mess with this stuff. Will you go on the appointment with me? Because I think it's right up your alley. She makes money. I get a property.
Yep.
And so now I spend a lot of time with agents, helping them solve. And then either that brings me a deal or creates some income, whatever the case may be. So a lot of it is just been through relationship and reputation. And our industry forgets that if we go into this with a win-win mindset and everybody wins, everybody makes money, we can all do a lot better.
100%. Yeah. That's the one thing that drives me crazy about this business. Like that Selling Sunset show, everybody watches that stuff. And you call these other agents on the other end of a deal and you immediately get like attitude or something like that. It's like, we both want the same. We both want to win. We both want to rip. How can we work together on this? And some of the best relationships I have, I've got agents that are in my market, obviously East Valley out here, and I do a lot of business with them. We call and we pick up. We've done tons of deals together.
Yeah.
We respect each other. They know how I work. I know how they work. And they know it's important. And guess what? At the end of the day, because I've had a lot of deals fall apart because the other agent just was horrible. Like their ego was too big. They just weren't like, hey, let's make this work.
Right.
And I don't know. It's one thing about this business. It's just the hardest thing for people to get over is just, hey, we're all in it together. Let's make this happen. Let's negotiate together and win. There doesn't have to be a win-lose. It can be a win-win in every situation.
And it can also be, hey, we can agree to disagree, and it's not the right deal. Cool, but let's at least have the conversation. It doesn't have to be a pissing contest.
For sure.
And it's just annoying. Like I got this email from this agent this weekend, and I'm like, house been on the market 24 days. It's been canceled twice. Yeah. I sent him an email like, hey, my clients want to be around this price. What do you think we can do? And then he comes back. I'm like, you've been canceled twice. And he's like, well, speaking from lots of experience, I don't think this is the right house for your clients. And maybe they should be doing this. And if you guys want to submit another offer, go ahead. I'm like,
yeah.
Deep breath. I'm like,
do you guys want to sell or not?
I'm like, and then I email back. I'm like, well, speaking from lots of experience, I did say my wife is a general contractor. We know what the cost is going to be. And does your seller have a number?
Right.
Like, just give me a number.
Yeah.
And then I can either say yay or nay and move on. And, the guy still has 2% co-broke, waive all contingencies and I'm like, dude, you're like 45 days behind.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for a seller. Right. At the end of the day.
Yeah. And you wonder if the seller knows that's how they're negotiating on their behalf sometimes. For sure. So you said you're not a systems guy. What systems and processes do you have in place?
No, it's not that I'm not a systems guy. It's just that, we don't drip on people.
Yeah.
We do two things really well.
Yeah.
We throw this huge VIP party every year. And, it's pretty much the same list it gets added to, right? So we keep that updated. Yeah. I do a lot of social, which a lot of people follow. Yeah. So, I do more of it there. I could probably do better on the drips and things like that. And that VIP party is, I think we had 300 people at our house this year, and it's amazing. And
you said you're on a couple acres, right?
Half acre.
I was gonna say that's a lot of people on a half acre.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I'm on like an acre, and I think we had last party we had at my house was like 60 or 70. I felt like a lot of people there.
Yeah, we've got
300 on a half acre.
We have a huge yard and a huge renovation that my wife did. That's awesome, but it's more open house, and we've got valet out there, so they move the cars and all that other stuff. So, but that's pretty bananas every year. And then we also do a huge investor dinner every year for all the people that invest with us.
That's legit.
And we do an appreciation dinner for them, which is really cool.
Heck yeah, nice. What's one question you wish I'd asked you that I didn't ask you today?
How many cars do I own?
How many? Okay, so. Last question actually is your favorite car, but let's dive into that. How many cars do you own right now?
The better thing is how I got the cars.
Okay, let's hear it. Tell me some stories.
So I got good stories. All right. Except for our daily drivers, every car that we own has come through a real estate transaction.
Okay.
Always be prepared for opportunity.
Yep.
So I just got a golf cart thrown in a deal this week.
55 from a friggin' probate sale.
Yeah. So the best deal was, and again, guys, this is like, I'm not saying to manipulate things. I'm just saying there's ways to document stuff that you can move through from one place to the next. So a house that I bought, You know, it was you and I's dream garage. You go back there. The guy's a Honda mechanic.
Okay.
And his email address is Chevelle Dude. You go in the garage. There's a 1,200 horsepower blown black 71 SS Chevelle.
Oh man, okay.
There's a 65 Chevelle that is like 800 horsepower dynoed. And then there's this yellow 71 SS Chevelle with a 502 big block on it.
Yeah. I think I've seen that in some videos on social media before.
So I'm like, he's relocating out of town. I'm like, where are you going? Like, what's going on with the cars? And I'm like, I'll give you $100,000 for all 3 cars.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
And, so we had paid $740 for the house. The car appraised at $80,000, and he let me buy it from him for $40,000. So I raised the price on the house $780.
Yep.
Threw the car in there for $1, and then we flipped.
Sale.
Yep. And then we flipped the house.
Yeah.
Well, the house made a little less than what it should have
Right.
because we raised the price to cover the car, but it shows that I paid $1 for the car.
Sure.
And so now the car sits in my garage and we own the asset free and clear.
Yep.
It's a great car, super fun.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the best ones. And then my favorite car, it's not done yet, is that 72 Blazer that is like
so sick. I've been watching the photo updates of that thing.
I just walked in the door and he was calling for a couple of things. He's like, we're pushing. So it'll be done on the 26th of June.
Yeah.
And it was my dream, right? So the crazy thing about that car, again, if you guys learn how business operates and taxes.
Yeah.
So that truck was next door to one of my rental properties. I knocked on the guy's door for 2 weeks. I'm like, dude, you want to sell this? He's like, make me an offer. The last guy didn't. And I'm like, $15,000. He's like, okay. Dude, it
Like
ran.
1,500.
It ran. I drove it home that day, and then I towed it up to Munns Park because I'm like, I don't want to drive this thing all the way up there.
Right.
And I made it an advertisement in Munns Park. So that's my showing vehicle in Munns Park. So it shows up in all my pictures. It shows up on my social.
Yeah.
And so what we did with it, because it was worked in there, I went through it with my CPA and I'm like, I'm going to build this for this.
Yep.
And it was 100%, it was an expense to the business, but it's 100% write off to build my dream truck.
Yep, marketing.
Because that's where it'll be.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was one of those things that I always wanted to do. I had one when I was in high school. It was stolen the first day of my senior year after I built it.
Yeah.
And
it's
it was
so hard to get these days in good shape.
Yeah, it was pearl white, and it had a killer sound system in it, and all those fun things. And there was a piece of shit Oldsmobile parked in my parking space when I came out, and I called my dad, and I'm like, "This is not funny." He's like, "I didn't do anything." Yeah. So never saw it again. So when this one came up, I'm like, it's been an awesome experience building it.
Yeah.
Because I found the right person that specializes in them, and he has been like clockwork, and it's been awesome.
Yeah. No, his friggin' builds look like crazy. You showed me his Instagram page. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Such detail. I think he just built one for like Travis Barker too, or something like that.
He did.
That's so legit.
Yeah. And the one that he has the highest selling Blazer ever at Barrett was $440,000 this year.
For a Blazer.
For a Blazer.
That's so
The thing was awesome because he did the Hot Rod chassis. It was the first time that Hot Rod had came out with a chassis for those. And it was all coilover suspension. It was like just dialed. It was so awesome.
Yeah, we got a Chevelle we're building right now. I'm excited to have that one done finally.
Yeah.
It just takes forever though.
It does.
The body work on it and stuff like that. They're doing like all the metal work and mini tubs on it and having the engine built, and then the frame took like 6 months from Roadster shop. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I like our old cars though. I got like an old 79 K10 and I've got some nice trucks and cars and stuff. And that's probably like my favorite to drive.
Yeah.
I don't even know why. It's the most rough riding. I like clinch when I run over train tracks and that thing. So I think my head's going to like fly through the friggin' roof because it rides like a pogo stick.
Yep.
Because the 79 K10 with the big block in it. But it's so fun. I just love that truck.
The newest addition is the monster truck.
Yeah, that thing's friggin' huge. I saw getting that thing emissions done out like a few weeks back.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I was like,
what do you got on 52s on that thing?
It's
or
56s.
Oh my God.
So the scary thing was, watching the emissions test. But the funny thing is that truck actually has a little bit of sentimental value. So
how did that thing even pass emissions? Is it legit? Like you got emissions on that thing?
It failed at idle. That was it. But it's got like a 572 big block in it, and it's just nasty, right? So, so my buddy owned Frontier Automotive, and he built that truck. And so Frontier Automotive was where I used to take my trucks when I was a teenager in high school, right? So it had been passed to the friend of mine that mentored me in the business, and he owned it, and he built that truck for the shop.
Oh, okay.
And I've got all these pictures of the kids in second and first grade when he drove the truck to pick him up the last day of school. So it was like this big thing. And so he called me, he sold the shop. He's like, dude, do you want this? I'm like, yeah.
Why not?
Why not? And so I bought it and I'm like, what am I going to do with this thing? So right now I just drive it to coffee and back. Yeah. But the attention in it is fun.
Oh, for sure.
But we're going to redo some stuff on it and do it for kids' charities, you know, to show up at different kids' events, PCH, different things like that. Because kids, you know, they're always in awe. It's always funny to watch the kids that are in the car with the phones. Like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun. My wife is super pissed at me, though.
She doesn't like it.
She came home from her appointment. It was parked in the driveway. She's
like, what's that?
Are you serious? You didn't even ask. I'm like, well, the two work wives said it was okay, so we're good, because my CFO is her best friend. And so I'm like, she said it was okay, so I bought it.
Yeah. I had that happen on, gosh, what was it? I had like my old, so I went through a phase where like in high school it was like mini trucks and stuff, like the airbags and the Mazda B2200s and the body dropped. I thought that was the coolest thing until like you blow an airbag and you're on like the side of the road and you can't go anywhere. I think, I hated that. Like air compressor go out and you're like, crap, like you're just stuck. You're literally like an anchor in the street at that point. So then I went through this phase where it's like, I'm gonna do nothing but lifted trucks, and I had that forever. And then my last truck, I think, was like my 18 Super Duty Platinum, had a 16, not as big as yours, 16-inch lift on like 40s and clean trucks, super nice, done up, king coilovers, triple bypass. I got so freaking tired of jumping into that truck. This is where I got old, dude. Like, I have a Denali HD, super comfortable, bone stock wheels, no lift, no exhaust. And I used to have the biggest lifted truck, loudest exhaust, like loudest stereo system. I remember I had a Blazer that had like 215s in it. Yep. I used to be all about the noise, everything, tire, like everything. And then like my last truck, I'd get out of it, and every once in a while I'd just get out of it wrong and throw my back out because I'm freaking getting old now. And I'm like, screw this. No, I just like quiet pickup trucks.
Yeah, I mean it's fun to go out, and we've got that yellow 71, and then we've got another 70 Chevelle that's being frame off right now. That we did an LS6 conversion on it and all that fun stuff. So it'll actually be a daily driver, right? We did all the upgraded suspension on it and all those things because we wanted that one to be able to jump in the car and drive to Vegas if we wanted to, right? But I mean, I love the newer cars, right? I'm not into like supercars and things like that. They're cool. We talked about it that night, right?
That Lambo, man, I had this. Tons of eyeballs. Let me tell you, that thing was the most uncomfortable damn thing, especially tall. I'm 6'5", so I get in that thing, and I remember we go down the 101, and I wear my hat, and I kid you not, I'd hit a bump in the road, my head's touching the roof. And I remember when we were test driving one, it was the Spider, which is a convertible one, and the top has to go behind the seat. And the seats sit 8 inches forward more, and they sit 2 inches higher because it's convertible. And I remember I looked like Lurch driving this thing. We got one in Vegas going down the strip. And I'm so tall that my friggin' head was like, my eyeballs were above the windshield.
Like Big Bird?
Yeah, dude. And
head over the windshield?
It broke my friggin' heart because I was a kid that had like the Lambo poster on the wall, and I was like, oh, I want to buy one so bad. And that was like my taste, right? At that point, I wasn't making as good of money, so I leased one for the weekend. I think we were up there for SEMA or something like that. I just remember driving on the strip. I looked like a freaking idiot. My head is sticking out above the roof of this damn car. I can never own a Lamborghini. This sucks. Like, I was so frustrated. And then I take it back, and then the guy's like, yeah, you should have just got the hardtop. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, it's got 8 more inches of legroom. He's like, sit in it. And I sat, I'm like, well, shit, why didn't you give me this? I look like an idiot all friggin' weekend driving around with my head sticking above this.
Oh my gosh. That's
so funny. Yeah, but even me being tall, I don't know how some of these athletes, like dudes that are like freaking 7 foot, how the hell do you fit in these cars? Because I barely did it. But yeah, we take it to dinner to like Scottsdale, most uncomfortable car. No cup holders, radios suck. Like, they're not all they're cracked up to be. Get a lot of attention, a lot of looks, a lot of photos and stuff like that. But other than that, it's they're not comfortable.
Nope.
So cool. Well, that's all I got for you today, man. I appreciate you coming in, and
Absolutely.
guys, hopefully you guys got some value from this. And where can they find you if they want to look you up, man? Give them all your social media.
You know, Instagram is the best place. It's at Steve D Valentine. Okay. That's where all my stuff, my coaching links are in the bio. But that's where I'm just constantly feeding information, encouragement. The different things to do.
I love that you guys show your flips too. You guys are like, this isn't like the traditional Instagram guy. It's like, oh, I flip some houses and don't show you. Like, he's actually out in the trenches. I see you posting all the time some of the deals you guys are buying. So I'd highly recommend you guys give a follow if you're looking for something.
Yeah, and it's a lot of numbers and a lot of different things, right? It's just it's going to be encouragement to change mindset, and for any of you that are out there that's really like going through like, what do I want to be? I think you're really good about it. Don't try to fake somebody you're not.
Nope.
Be your authentic self.
You'll feel better doing it too.
You'll feel better. You may, not attract some people, but you're going to attract the people that truly want to work with you. Yeah. And if you think that showing up, and everybody has a different space, right? I know some people that love to dress up in their suits and ties. Yep. It just never was for me. And so, you know, once I started wearing cowboy boots and chucks and t-shirts and just kind of branding and having fun and just showing up, I realized like it was a lot easier to connect with people because you felt good in your skin and what you were doing.
Absolutely.
And there was no, you know, judgment. And how you see me on social is how I show up everywhere.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's no chameleon thing going in there.
Absolutely. I agree. So cool. Well, I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks man. Appreciate it.
Man. Thanks, guys.